Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming during this busy day on Wednesday. My name is J.O. I'm the Art and Culture Director here at the Korea Society. Just before we start, I just wanted to let you know for all your support throughout the years. We can't do this without you. If you're not a member, please consider joining as a Korea Society member. We have all the information available on our website, also at the back. We have a really interesting program today. This all came together because of a program that's coming up in Lincoln Center tomorrow night, a concert called The K Factor, which will be an orchestral exploration of Korean pop music. And we have three wonderful people who are able to join us today. First of all, I'd like to introduce Jakob Dorof, who is a journalist based in Korea, one of the first Western journalists to write about Korean music, and he's also a creative consultant for the concert tomorrow. We have Soeun Lee, who happens to be a big pop star in Korea during the late 1990s, early 2000, who is now a lawyer and who lives in New York, and also another nonprofit founder. Mm-hmm. And then we also have Chris Lee, who is an executive of SM Entertainment from Korea, who is truly one of the reason why we have the K-pop phenomenon in this day and age. So please welcome our panelists. So shall we start with you, Jakob?
Sure. I think the idea today is this is a conversation on or around K Factor, this show that's happening tomorrow. But we have Chris here and Soeun as well, because to talk a little more directly and authentically to some of the themes of the concert that we're covering at the show tomorrow, which is that the concert is not so much like a symphonic tribute to K-pop or something like that. It's going to be played by a 50-piece orchestra and all that stuff. But there is sort of like a central theme and thesis to the show, exploring the topic of what makes K-pop unique, what makes K-pop musically innovative or distinct from Western popular music or Japanese or Chinese or any popular music. How does that help explain why it's so popular now in the K-pop phenomenon in general? Because I think that's a bit of like an underreported or underappreciated side of K-pop and why it's so successful nowadays. And also it takes a bit of a historical view of what about K-pop is musically unique and how far back through K-pop or Korean popular music history does that go. So actually the first selections in the concert date all the way back to the 1920s. And then chronologically, you can kind of see the progression from there over the course of the concert, ending in 2019, the present day. So why Chris is here today is a lot of what has to do with how K-pop sounds nowadays, and particularly this sort of like innovative, musically distinct side of K-pop has a lot to do with his company, SM Entertainment, and he is an executive there of A&R. So he's very involved in the way the music is actually put together and the way that it sounds and how it works compositionally. So Chris has a very unique perspective about that that's super relevant to the show, and that's actually why Lincoln Center invited him and SM to come partake in the event, because SM is so central to that main theme and focus of the show. So Chris is actually giving a presentation at Lincoln Center tonight at 7 p.m. as well. Soeun is, like Jay introduced, a pop star from Korea in the late 90s and 2000s, and has a lot of firsthand experience in the industry and also being in and around this type of music that the concert is focused on. So yeah, that's the idea.
So shall we start from when was SM founded? And so let's sort of go back to that point when we are talking about the history of K-pop, because we sort of talked about a little bit of when K-pop sort of became, when did it sort of started to become what it is today. So shall we sort of go back to 1990s, late 1980s, early 1990s?
Well, I think maybe first we could even define a little bit of what this most inventive or innovative or musically distinct K-pop is, because it's I think perhaps in the West, a lot of people in the media and sort of a general audience sees K-pop kind of monolithically as, certain cliches or stereotypes that they have about K-pop, and it's sort of narrow. But it is actually a really broad spectrum encompassing all different kinds of styles and genres of music. And the side of K-pop that the concert focuses on most of all is that side of it that, again, what makes it unique. There's a lot of like structural innovation, like unconventional song forms, a lot of what is called like genre bending, where you're suddenly going from one genre to another and then back, or some, a third or fourth one. And this sort of like continually surprising song structure that has, there's like points of comparison that you can make in Western pop or elsewhere, but it does manifest in a really original, distinct way in Korea. And that's always been my guiding interest in previously writing about it and now doing projects like this Lincoln Center thing and having moved there in 2014. So, that's sort of the focus of the show, and I think an important moment in that trajectory. So with the concert, it goes, like I said, all the way back to the 1920s, and we sort of trace that through. But a really major inflection point would be a song that a lot of people know called Nan Arayo by Sotaeji wa Aidur, or Sotaeji and Boys, from 1992, which was a really massive hit, basically helped modernize the Korean popular music sound with, it was the first song to get extremely popular with like a designated like choreography and like this more visual aspect to it. And that song is very musically interesting because it's primarily like a New Jack Swing based R&B type song that was popular globally at the time in the early 90s. But it has these sudden breaks into heavy metal, and it's a total like, instrumental and generic, genre based change, total tone shift. And that breakdown's like instrumental, and it's just like it totally breaks up the rhythm of the song, but it still somehow works. And then in the chorus, there's a sort of like Korean ballad element to it as well. So that really opened up a lot of doors in Korean popular music in the 90s. And that is the period in which SM entered. SM had been around for a little while, but their first true modern K-pop boy band and K-pop group in general was HOT in 1996, and that was SM Entertainment, and really innovated a lot of things, and was a major inflection point once again in this sort of trajectory of what has made K-pop original and innovative and interesting in the past couple of decades, particularly. And really, like that moment with HOT really begins opening up, I think, the potential for it to have become the international phenomenon that it is today, both from like a sort of like a business standpoint, but also a musical standpoint in terms of its innovation and what makes it distinct. And that was also the time that Soeun started promoting in Korea at a very young age in the late 90s. So she has a kind of like firsthand on stage, on the music shows kind of perspective as well. So yeah, that's very interesting.
So can we start talking a little bit about SM music?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what makes the SM music different? Is there SM sound? Is there a philosophy behind how the music is produced? How the artists are encouraged and trained? We all always hear these stories of the K-pop stars being, going through hours and hours of practice. So what makes it so different other than just them being incredible singers and dancers and being able to do all these things together? What makes SM's artists different from, say, Britney Spears? Or, what is the system that makes them very Korean, I guess, for lack of better words?
Well, Chris,
Yeah.
if you want to jump in there.
Okay. 저는 영어를 잘 못해서 한국말로 하고 좀 통역을 부탁드리겠습니다. I'm sorry, my English is not good, so
We have an
I'm going to speak
interpreter.
in Korean. Have a great translator here. Okay, 너무 좀 사실 방대한 질문이에요. 뭐가 다르냐? K-pop 혹은 SM 사운드 혹은 XM의 음악이 뭐가 다른지에 대해서 질문 주셨는데, 음악적으로 혹은 그러니까 음악적이라고 하는 게 어떤 이 음악의 그 스트럭처에 있어서의 다른 점도 있고, 사운드, 그리고 저희는 이 K-팝이라고 하는 거를 어떤 음악의 하나의 장르보다는 컨텐츠의 장르라고 좀 표현을 하기 때문에 그런 쪽으로의 접근, 조금 더 근본적으로 가면 저희가 바라보고 있는 이 음악 산업, 한국에서 이 크지 않은 지형적으로 봤을 때 이렇게 크지 않은 한국이라는 나라에서 어떻게 해외로 나가서 해외의 음악 시장을 개척할 수 있을지에 대한 그런 고민에서부터 시작했던 여러 가지가 사실은 굉장히 복합적으로 작용을 한 게 저희 SM 엔터테인먼트 음악이고 K-팝이라고 일단 생각을 하는데요.
So that's a really big question to answer. I would say when you say what is it about SM that gives it its unique sound, I think it's a lot of things. It can be the musical structure itself is a bit different. You can also talk about the sound in itself. But I would like to say that K-pop, I would like to say that it's not, I don't really consider it just as a genre in itself, but we consider it more as a cultural content. If you go deeper into it, there are multiple factors that go into K-pop, which is you have to think of Korea being a small country. We also think about how we are going to target not only the Korean market, but also foreign markets and how we will be able to be successful in those markets musically. So there are a lot of considering factors that we have to consider when we think about K-pop.
네. 그래서 이렇게 많은 그 요소들이 있지만 가장 중요한 게 하나가 있어요. 여기에 공통점이 하나가 있는데 제가 뭐 회사를 위하거나 이런 얘기해서가 아니고 이 처음부터 여기까지 딱 한 명의 프로듀서만 존재합니다. 저희 SM 엔터테인먼트. 저는 SM이니까 SM 얘기로 할게요. K-팝이라고 하면 제가 K-팝을 다 대변할 수는 없을 것 같고요. SM 엔터테인먼트는 시작할 때부터 지금까지 30년이 넘는 시간 동안 단 한 명의 프로듀서가 모든 거를 다 총괄했고 이 프로듀서의 브레인이 전 회사에 다 녹아들은 저도 그 브레인 중에 음악이라고 하는 A&R 파트에 이제 장을 맡고 있는 브레인 중에 하나인데 이수만이라고 하는 프로듀서가 많은 사실은 음악 장르, 컨텐츠의 장르라고 보시는 게 저희 SM을 대변하는 가장 중요한 키워드일 것 같아요.
Like I mentioned, there are various factors that go into the making of K-pop, but I would say there is one important process that is common to all K-pop, at least for SM. For about 3 decades, one producer has been involved in all the processes of the music that we create, and that is our head of the company, Lee Soo-man, who is always involved in all of our endeavors.
So he's not only the head of my company or founder, but also he is the main producer. The important thing is he is the main producer. That's the very important thing. 그래서 뭐 이 뒤에 다른 질문들이 있으니까 제가 여기서 다 대답은 안 하겠지만 이 이수만이라고 하는 한 명의 프로듀서가 갖고 있는 음악에 대한 해석, 한국의 음악의 좋은 점과 어떠한 거를 해외에서부터 갖고 와야 되는지, 음악이라고 하는 하나의 요소만으로는 우리나라를 넘어선 해외 시장에서 더 보여줘야 될 더 많은 가치들을 어떻게 애드해야 되는지, 그리고 이 음악을 갖고 모네타이즈 할 때, 이거를 산업화를 할 때 우리는 뭐가 필요한지. 그럼 회사 입장에서는 단순하게 레코드 레이블에서 시작해서 어떠한 회사들로 성장을 해나가고 어떻게 회사를 뭐 M&A든 무엇이든 간에 어떻게 회사를 그룹화해 성장시켜 나가는지, 이거를 음악의 프로듀서의 관점에서 차근차근 한 30년 동안 밟아나간 게 SM이고, 여기서 기본적으로 SM의 음악이라는 게 좀 파생을 했습니다. 길었지만 여기까지. 네.
So For Isuman, I think his unique interpretation of what is musically sound and what is interesting, as well as what to bring in from other foreign influences, say, as well as adding value of certain Korean elements that he thinks that are musically very good, and also branching out from that to think about what is needed to actually monetize this company, as well as thoughts about how to grow the company, whether it's through an M&A or other factors. So I will say that for SM, Isuman has always been the driving force for 30 years with a music producer's perspective to develop all of this.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really important point that not a lot of people understand about K-pop is that when you get an American album or most music industry's albums and on the back it says like executive producer David Geffen or something like that, that's really a business person's role, right? They're making certain decisions at a really high business level, but they're not a producer in the sense of somebody behind the boards making musical decisions. In K-pop, that executive producer is actually a producer role as well. So that's the case with Mr. Isuman, for example. Even to this day, his musical sensibility is in every song. He's overseeing pretty much everything and having a really direct hand in everything. I think to further clarify, you can think of SM sort of as being microcosmic of Korean popular music in general, where they do all kinds of songs and all different genres of songs. And some of them are very linear and straightforward. It could be like a ballad song, or it could be bossa nova, or it could be any kind of popular song, really. But the side of it that personally I've always found most interesting and innovative and distinct and perhaps significant internationally, and really what is the focus of the K-Factor show, is that kind of genre-bending, juxtapositional, multi-movement structure that somehow works at a really high level in the Korean market, not just aesthetically, but as popular music, which is something that's really quite uncommon globally. It's really distinct. And I think in terms of understanding SM's contribution to that, it has a lot to do with something called SMP, which was developed in the 90s by Mr. Isuman, and perhaps the second biggest producer within SM in SM's overall history, which is a guy named Yoo Young-jin, who produced a lot of SM's early hits in collaboration with Isuman, and is still really involved to this day. So, Chris, if you could maybe explain a little bit about SMP, I think that would be really interesting, because that whole way of thinking about music as like one component of like a larger aesthetic system and how those things all influence each other compositionally really helps explain. So I'll say off the bat a little bit about that, which is the way that Yoo Young-jin has kind of described it in the past is that it started in the 90s with Isuman coming to him and saying something along the lines of, you know, I want to make one original song that sort of sounds like it's a remix of 5 different songs at the same time. So how about we take a piece of a song that I wrote, as Isuman, I wrote, and combine it with a song that Yoo Young-jin, have made, and if we combine these, say, 3 different songs that could be each significant on the album into one song, that would be more efficient, and it would be like a single compact metaphor for the entire album or something like that, which is a really pretty original way of thinking about pop music structure. So if you could maybe speak a little more to like how that works, that's really interesting.
Okay. So you were asking me about like what's the SMP?
SMP and how that works.
Does that stand for SM Productions or
No,
producers?
it's SM Music Performance.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, SM Music Performance. 옆에 이소은님이 계시지만 이게 아마 겪어보셔서 아시겠지만은 솔로 아티스트가 한 명의 가수가 노래를 처음부터 끝까지 3분 30초 정도 되는 보통 이 노래를 굉장히 짧잖아요, 저희가 생각할 때는. 근데 이 3분 30초 안에 굉장히 많은 생각을 하면서 그걸 수시간 동안 녹음을 하거든요. 그게 한 명의 가수의 목소리가 그냥 쭉 처음부터 끝까지 나간다고 생각을 하면 오산이에요. 그럼 사람들이 재미없어서 못 들어요. 이 노래를 이 가사에 맞게 어떤 파트에 맞게 굉장히 이 안에서 굉장히 여러 가지 시도를 하면서 그렇게 노래를 만들어야 사람들이 끝까지 그 안에서 다이나믹을 즐길 수 있고 그렇게 하나의 노래가 완성이 되거든요.
Yeah. So yes, I would like to say when we think of a solo artist having a song, right? Usually it's about like 3 minutes and 30 seconds. We think of it as a really short amount of time, but in reality, when we're actually recording, we really record for hours and hours and hours. If you think of one person's voice just going straight through with one song, it's too dull. Like people will not be able to get through that. So it's really a process of us trying different things with different parts and with different dynamics, and you have to really consider how much actual time really goes into the production of just this one single or song.
SMP라고 하는 건 뭐 3분 30초, 저희는 조금 곡이 3분 30초보다 좀 긴 편이긴 한데 이 4분 안에 가장 이 4분 안에 할 수 있는 모든 걸 다 동원해서 음악을 베이스로 한, 음악을 중심으로 한 컨텐츠를 전달하는 시간을 만드는 작업이라고 생각을 해요. 그래서 한 명의 정말 뛰어난 가수가 이 여러 가지 곡의 구성을 좀 다르게 해석하면서 노래를 부르는 것도 좋지만 더 다이나믹을 주기 위해서 여러 명의 사람들이 파트를 쪼개서 이 사람이 나왔다가 지루할 시간 틈도 없이 다른 사람이 나와서 여러 가지 목소리를 계속 듣게 만들죠. 지루할 틈이 없어요. 거기에
Wait, are you saying all solo artists are boring?
No.
I was a solo artist, by the way. I object.
No.
So what MP does essentially is within that short time of about 4 minutes, we really want to do everything we can do. We're trying to cram everything we can in to communicate our cultural content, so to speak. So we usually don't go with just one artist going straight through the song. We really have different artists, chipping in and coming in with their own flavor or voice, so that as the listener, you really have no time to be bored. Like we don't give you that second to sort of be like, oh, this is boring. Like we literally do not give you the time to think that, because we're always chipping in with different voices.
이렇게
Because
생각하셔야
it
돼요.
is extremely difficult as a solo artist to keep
네.
that interest going.
We should also say SM has a lot of solo artists too. So
Of course. 이렇게 생각하면 돼요. 어벤져스 1편에 보면 사람들이 가장 충격을 받았던 영화의 장면이 뭐냐면 이게 그 어벤져스 1편이에요. 뒤쪽에 보면은 그 이제 뉴욕 시가전이 나오는데 거기에서 이 어벤져스 여러 명들이 한 명씩 이렇게 갔다가 다른 사람과 다니는 액션 시퀀스가 있어요. 굉장히 짧은 시간 안에 어벤져스 6명의 멤버들이 다 보여지면서 악당하고 싸우는 씬이 있는데 그런 액션 시퀀스가 아마 뭐 처음은 아니었지만 가장 퍼퓰러하게 간 게 어벤져스였거든요. 그리고 사람들이 거기 느끼죠. 이게 아이언맨의 영화도 재미있지만 이 다른 여러 액션 히어로들이 그 굉장히 짧은 시간 안에 이런 시퀀스를 하면서 얼마나 그 장면이 더 재미있고 좀 다이나믹해지는지. 그러니까 오해 안 하셨으면 좋겠지만 이건 좀 장르의 특성인 거죠. 그러니까 감정선을 가져야 되는 멜로 드라마에서 남자 여자 주인공이 많을 수는 없어요. 발라드가 마찬가지죠. 근데 저희는 이제 저 음악으로 치면 이제 액션이죠. 저희 댄스 뮤직이라고 하는 건. 그런 것들이 굉장히 이걸 좀 재미있게 만들어주고 거기에 조금만 더 해도 될까요? 네. 거기에 더해서 굉장히 여러 그 장르적으로 이 댄스 뮤직을 가장 좀 흥미롭게 만들기 위해 장르들 좀 섞습니다. 그래서 아마 저희가 좀 음악이 하나 준비되어 있는데 제가 이 설명을 드리고 음악을 한번 좀 들어볼게요. 저희가 얼마나 많은 장르를 하나의 음악에 넣었는지 좀 들려드리도록 하겠습니다.
So just to give you an analogy, I guess I would like to refer to the Avengers, especially the first movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I think one of the scenes that shocked viewers the most was an action sequence where you see each member, I think there were 6 of them at the time, and they come into the scene in New York, the last few minutes where they come in one by one. And I mean, Iron Man on his own is great, but I think viewers were really entertained by the fact that all these Avenger members were coming in because it made it even more dynamic. And I don't want you to take this the wrong way or anything, but I think it's more of a matter of genre, where I would say K-pop, at least what I'm about to show you now, is more, I would say genre-wise, you would call it more of an action genre rather than a romance or a romance or a ballad which would require, like a man and a woman. But with an action genre, when you think of the Avengers, it really does benefit the genre to have multiple players in that category. So I'd like to show you a clip or a song.
Play.
Yeah, I would like to play it to show you just how many genres we're able to juxtapose in a single song.
Not this one?
Not this one. We're going to play, I think, Aya by HOT. So this is an example from SM's first really big boy band in the 90s. And so you get a little bit of the flavor of that time and the production value back then and all that stuff.
And you can get a hint of the type of music I did, because I did exactly what they're doing.
No visual, yeah.
그
joking.
이소은 씨 활동하실 때 나왔던 음악이에요.
Yeah,
So contemporary.
So this was like a big hit in the late 90s in Korea.
Classic. Okay, we can stop here.
Okay, sure.
그 음악을 들어보시면 아셨겠지만 처음에 클래식 피스로부터 시작해서 그 클래식 피스에서 기타 리프라고 하죠. 보통 이제 헤비메탈이나 락에서 쓰이는 기타 리프를 끌어내고 그 기타 리프에 헤비메탈과 같은 샤우팅이 들어갔다가 서서히 댄스 음악으로 바뀌어요. 그래서 코러스 파트까지 오면 완전히 댄스 음악을 하고 다시 메탈이 들어왔다가 두 번째 코러스가 끝난 다음에 이제 브릿지, 이제 미들 에이지라고 표현하는 부분에서는 이소은 씨가 하는 장르인 완벽한 발라드로도 들어가요. 완벽한 발라드로 들어가고 그 뒤에 댄스 브레이크가 나온 다음에 다시 댄스가 되고 이 곡의 맨 마지막을 들어보면은 헤비메탈로 끝나요. 그러니까 이 곡 안에 지금 굉장히 많은 이렇게 장르들이 이게 한 4분 30초 정도 되는 걸로 알고 있는데 굉장히 쉴 새 없이 이렇게 반복되면서 사람들이 뭐 단순하게 지루할 틈이 없게 만든다기보다는 계속 끊임없이 이런 요소들을 넣어주는 거죠. 이거는 이렇게 장르적으로 저희가 그 곡의 구성 요소를 여러 가지 장르를 넣을 때도 있고 하나의 장르로 끝까지 가지만은 예를 들면 같은 멜로디를 1절 벌스와 2절 벌스에 반복을 할 때도 그 멜로디에 바리에이션을 준다든지 위에다가 하모니를 쌓는다든지 아니면 멜로디를 조금 아니면은 그 다른 파트를 거기 같은 부분에 좀 넣어준다든지 이런 식으로 계속 변형을 주면서 하나의 노래를 끝까지 듣는 동안에 계속 이런 좀 지루하지 않고 좀 재미있게 만드는 SMP가 뭐냐고 말씀 주셨는데 계속 이렇게 사람들로 하여금 끊임없이 음악적으로 뿐만 아니고 여기에 이제 컨텐츠라든지 안무, 코리오그래피라고 표현하는 그 안무가 더해지면서 굉장히 하나의 응축된 그런 듣고 보는 즐거움이 있는 그런 응축된 컨텐츠라고 표현되는 게 저희 SMP인 것 같습니다. 좀 말이 길었네요.
So just to give you a brief breakdown of that song you guys just listened to, you notice that it starts off with the classic and then a guitar riff on it, then it goes into shouting with nods to heavy metal, then it goes into dance music, back to metal, heavy metal, and then during the bridge we switch to a ballad. We have a dance break, then we go back to the and then back to heavy, it ends in heavy metal. So you can see how many different genres that we're able to actually put into this song that lasts about like 4 or so minutes. So we have SM has different ways of varying the listening experience. The first one is to put, like in this song, different elements genre-wise into one song. But even if it is, say, one genre of a song, we will, say, sometimes do variations on one melody or give different sort of parts within one melody. So I think that is the base for a more varied and fun experience for the listener, not just musically, but also if you put it together with the choreography and other visual elements, it becomes this really condensed and full form of entertainment and a more fun experience.
And for you, Soeun, I'm sure it brought back a lot of memories just to hear that music too. What was it like being a pop singer in Korea as a young girl. I believe you were 16 when your first album came out, and in 1998. So what was it like for you, that whole experience of not just the fame and popularity, but just working as a musician? Because I understand that you also wrote your own songs. So what was it like to work in the Korean pop music?
Sure. So give you a little bit of background. So I lived in the States for about 5 years when I was in elementary school, and then I went back to Korea, not to pursue a music career, but just because my parents were done with their studies, and we ended up going back. And I went back when I was entering middle school. It's tough as a teenager to adjust to a new culture, new country. So I played classical violin. My sister plays piano, so I was always surrounded by a lot of music. But I also really like to sing. And so I'd started to practice writing songs since I was maybe in 5th grade, just for fun, really not with anything in mind. But then I saw an ad for a songwriting competition in Korea as soon as I went there. And I entered it, and I ended up doing quite well. And through that competition, I met my producers who contacted me and ended up kind of changing my life in a very different way. So that's how I entered the K-pop scene. I guess it was fate. I guess it was a lot of luck. There was a whole lot of things that went into that, but that's how I started my career in the K-pop industry. And something that, Jacob, I think you alluded to before in your opening about the definition of K-pop, which I think is very interesting, because when I first, for example, so I worked in the K-pop industry for about a decade, and then I came back to the States to pursue another career. And everyone would ask me, and there would be Korean students studying with me, and they would ask me, so you're a K-pop artist? And then the Americans who didn't know me would be like, oh, cool, that's very nice. And then they would ask me what kind of artist I was like. And in the past 5 years, when word gets around that I was a K-pop artist, there's this, newfound sense of excitement. And they would ask me, were you like Psy? And I'm like, not really. And then in the past year or two, everyone's like, so you're like BTS? And again, not really. So I feel like the word K-pop, the definition of K-pop, has become very specific, because how I introduce myself still is I was a K-pop artist in the late 90s up until mid 2000s, but that definition has changed quite significantly, I think. And I remember being in the same music shows with H.O.T. because we were contemporaries. I debuted in 98. They debuted in 96, you said? Yeah, and there were other artists from the company and other artists that more than myself fit the mold of a K-pop artist that you would think about these days. Usually they were groups. I guess they were more the Avengers genre. And so I remember sharing the stage with them. I would converse with them all the time because we shared, backstage, and they were my peers. And so it was interesting for me because, I was very young. I was 16 at the time. And I think maybe you said this to me, or I was just thinking it, but you mentioned adult contemporary music was similar to what I did. Is that what you said? But I can't remember.
Yeah, something.
But I was like 16, so adult contemporary really wasn't my genre either. So my journey within the K-pop industry was, I was fortunate enough to meet two producers that were artists in their own right, very, very well known, extremely respected. Their names are Yoon Sang and Lee Seung-wan, and they kind of became my mentors. They became my musical teachers, and I think I sort of fell into maybe that family of music making, which I guess if you think about it in a film, it's not an action, it's more like maybe a monologue. It's more of instead of, taking you through an interesting cultural experience, which I think is a really wonderful way to explain what K-pop has become. For me, I think my music was more of an emotional experience of a specific, incident in your life. I guess that's how I would characterize the type of music I did. But I think being an artist that young in the industry, surrounded by a diverse group of people, you have the opportunity to kind of experiment. You're still trying to find your voice. You're still trying to find, what type of artist am I? And the funny thing about Korean pop is every time you come out with a new record, I remember journalists would always ask, okay, could you introduce your album? And everyone would have this, very well constructed sentence about the genre.
What's your concept?
Yeah, what's the concept and what's the genre? And for me, I never really thought of myself as a ballad artist, really, but that's how I was perceived. But I think in my records, I put in a lot of different types of music, but it just didn't rise to the push tune level. You have to kind of weigh what you like versus the commercially viable options. So I think my experience all over, my experiences in the industry was to take in everything, to experience as much as I could. And luckily for me, I had a group of producers and collaborators who really listened to a 15, 16-year-old, really asked me what I wanted to do. I remember I sat down with Lee Seung-wan and Yoon Sang and another composer named Hwang Sung-jae, who works with SM quite a lot, and he's one of my best friends. And his debut was working on a song with me in Lee Seung-wan's album, which is very, very interesting. And Lee Seung-wan basically told him, you two can work together and both of you can debut at the same time. So it was a really wonderful collaborative experience because I really had no mandate. You have to make a sound that sounds like this. It was all kind of, okay, let's think about what you want and let's think if it makes sense and see if we could compromise and find a way to give voice to that vision. So that was my experience.
One thing that I think is interesting, though, is although we're kind of creating this dichotomy here, like there's this group sound of K-pop that's really like adventurous and goes in all these different directions, and then there's the more linear soloist side. In fact, there's a lot in the soloist side of K-pop that also has this kind of, multi-genre, multi-movement, very like structurally dynamic composition to it. And that's actually part of why I thought of you originally, is that you do have some of these songs on your albums that do go all over the place and do really interesting things.
Yeah.
There's a couple on your first two albums, again, working with Lee Seung-wan, who's also done a ton of this kind of music too, that's very multi-genre, very adventurous, like 7-minute long ballad, but it goes into all these other genres too. And so like a song of yours, like That's Entertainment or Shinbi. And it was interesting talking to you on the phone about that and hearing that the inspiration for that came from you liking musicals.
Yeah.
I guess Western musicals.
Yeah.
Picked up when you were in the States.
I think I liked the theatrical aspect of it. I liked because like I said, for me, music was an emotional journey. So what's better to experience that or to express that than like theater and musicals. And I still really love them. And I remember I watched a few productions and I sat down with Lee Seung-wan and Yoon Sang and Hwang Sung-jae, and I was telling them, I really need to put a very similar musical type of piece into my album. I love this. I love this genre, and I really want to put it in there. And so we decided to get a bunch of other artists to collaborate with me on my first album, which was a real honor. The artists that I revered ever since I was young. So certain artists, I don't know if you may know them, like Lee-jeok and Kim Hyung-joo. A lot of these, artists came and they sang on this song for me because it was a theatrical performance, and they were kind of being the mentors of this young girl stepping into a life in entertainment, and that's why the song was called That's Entertainment. And so I really enjoyed that experience, and so I tried to continue that in my next record.
Right. It just reminded me of something Chris said to me once about how SM, for certain songs, thinks about song structure as though it were an entire musical being crammed into one song. So if you're going to have a musical, like Chris has told me before, like it can't just be slow tempo music the whole time. You need this whole song story to it. You need this sort of progression and a lot of dynamics. So they kind of apply that structure to a single popular song. And so when I heard those Lee Soeun songs that reminded me of that a little bit, it was interesting talking to her and hearing that the inspiration originally was musicals. So I think there is some significance there in terms of how the music works.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I really admire about the artists from SM is that they're able to. So mine is more of an audio experience, more of a podcast, I suppose, rather than YouTube. But SM is able to take, SM artists is, what I've noticed is that they're very capable and good at taking those types of theatrical experiences in audio and visually. And so I think that's what captures audiences. And I see that when they perform on stage. And so I think there is some commonality to that. I don't know what the intent, if it was intentional or if it was like what the process was in coming up with those types of, structures.
Yeah.
Think about maybe like a song like I Got a Boy or something like that.
Yeah. 그 두 가지 예를 살짝 들어보면은 소녀시대의 I Got a Boy라는 곡과 그리고 샤이니의 이제 셜록이라는 곡을 각각 두 가지 다른 예를 좀 들어볼 수 있을 것 같은데요.
So I think we can think of two examples here. One is the group Shiny's Aya, and the second one is Girls' Generation's Aya and
I Got a
Shiny's I Got a Boy and Shiny's Sherlock.
그 I Got a Boy 같은 경우는 처음에 저희가 데모를 받을 때부터 이미 그 데모 자체에 그런 엄청난 BPM의 그 곡이 계속 BPM 이렇게 변하거든요. BPM도 변하고 곡의 장르가 한 곡 안에서 6번 이상의 곡 변하는 그러한 곡을 아예 SM에 맞게 처음부터 데모를 제작해서 저희한테 받았고 거기에 저희가 더 크레이지하게 더 발라드 파트를 넣고 그걸 다시 쪼갠 다음에 다시 배치를 했던 그런 곡이었었어요. 저희로서도 굉장히 어렵지만 재미있는 작업의 곡이었었고요.
So I Got a Boy, that was constructed from the beginning as incorporating a lot of changes, especially like BPM changes. We have over 6 BPM changes in that one song. And it's a song that we would have different parts in them that we would divvy up and we would slice it up and then also put them back together. So it was a really sort of interesting and crazy process with that one.
샤이니의 셜록이라는 곡이 조금 저희도 작업하면서 굉장히 재미있었는데 프로듀서가 이런 A&R에게 이런 그 오더를 내린 게 2개 혹은 3개의 곡을 합친 곡을 만들어 내라. 그래서 저희가 그 당시 한 30명 정도의 A&R이 굉장히 여러 가지 수백 개의 곡을 갖고 이러한 파트를 서로 이렇게 이렇게 합치면서 여러 개의 좀 후보곡을 만들어냈고 그 중에 이제 뽑아낸 곡이 셜록이라는 곡이었었어요.
So with Sherlock, we were given the directive to make a song that sounds like 2 or 3 songs combined into one. So at the time, around 30 people at the A&R department, we were working literally with over 100 songs, putting them together, putting them back together, and that's how we came up with Sherlock.
네, 근데 이 셜록이라는 곡이 2개의 곡으로 합쳐진 건데 재미있는 게 이 2개의 곡이 하나는 노트라는 곡이고 하나는 클로라는 곡이었어요. 그래서 이 곡을 음악적으로 하나의 곡으로 섞기 위해서 파트를 쪼개서 나눈 그런 음악적인 시도가 있었고 또 하나는 이 2개의 가사가 그렇게 음악적으로 합쳤을 때 셜록이라는 하나의 가사로 말이 되게 만드는 그러니까 2개의 가사가 있는데 섞어서 결국은 결론이 나오게 만드는 이런 2가지 좀 복합적인 작업을 했던 곡이었는데 상당히 저희도 이제 작업하면서 너무 어려웠지만 재미있었던 곡이었거든요. 근데 이게 제가 지금 단순히 음악적인 말씀을 드리려고 한다기보다는 그 저희 이제 SMP 혹은 K팝의 제일 중요한 특징이라고 볼 수 있는 스토리텔링이 이 곡에서 이제 가장 극대화된 곡이었기 때문에 제가 이 말씀 드리는 건데 H.O.T 때부터 지금 혹시 들어보셔서 아시는지 모르겠지만 예를 들면 엑소 같은 경우는 2개의 그 엑소 K와 엑소 M이라고 하는 친구들이 평행 이론에 의해서 외계에서 온 초능력을 가진 이러한 친구들로 묘사가 되어 있는데 이러한 전체적인 세계관이 모든 앨범의 곡들과 이 앨범들 간의 유기성을 주고 거기에 붙어 있는 모든 비디오나 티저 비디오들이 하나로 다 모으면 하나의 거대한 스토리가 돼요. 그러니까 이러한 것들이 아까 제일 처음부터 얘기를 좀 드려보면은 하나의 음악을, 한 곡의 음악 안에서의 스토리텔링부터 결국은 이러한 곡이 모여서 만들어진 앨범 단위, 그리고 결국은 그 전체의 아티스트, 그리고 결국은 저희 아티스트들이 모인 이 SM이라고 하는 전체의 회사, 혹은 이러한 회사들이 모인 K-팝이라고 하는 장르 전체가 굉장히 거대한 하나의 스토리텔링을 이루는데, 제가 볼 때는 이런 스토리텔링을 주는 건 당연히 곡에 혹은 이런 아티스트의 끊임없이 이렇게 재미있는이라기보다는 끊임없이 흥미로운 요소를 부과하는 그런 중요한 장치라고 생각하고, 또 K-팝의 제일 중요한 요소 중에 하나라고 보거든요. 아마 이 부분이 좀 제일 네.
Right. So, starting with Sherlock, that's a song that's actually a combination of two songs. One was the song Note, and the second song was called Clue. To combine these songs, we had to actually divide each song into parts and to mash them together. And also because they had separate lyrics, we also had to take apart the lyrics and try to combine those lyrics to make the lyrics of the song that eventually became Sherlock. I would say it was one of the most difficult experiences producing that song, but it was also very rewarding. I'm telling you guys about this because I want to approach this subject not just from a musical point of view, but from, I would say, a more intensified storytelling point of view. For example, one of our artists, they're a group, but there's XOK and XOM. Their story is that they are alien beings from outer space that have supernatural powers, right? So everything that they do, every song, every teaser trailer to their music videos, it's all part of a larger, much bigger story that they tell. And when you think of that culminating in their albums, and then the albums representing themselves as artists, and then our company SM as a whole, and then if you go into a bigger sense of just the K-pop world as a whole, it's this one huge storytelling experience where there's a continual storytelling elements that are added and are developed to, and I feel that for K-pop, that's a really important thing to consider.
Right. Yeah. Reminds me a little bit of actually a song that is going to be featured in the concert tomorrow that Soeun covered at one point in 2004.
Oh, yes.
Studio recording of, it's a song called Yagun, or Overtime. And it is by, I don't know if anybody knows the folk musician from the 70s in Korea named Kim Min-gi. He's a bit of a legend. Can't think of exactly who to compare him to. Maybe not like a Bob Dylan, but somebody of that sort of stature. Not the same kind of voice, but that kind of folk artist. And in the late 70s, he was banned by the government, an authoritarian military dictatorship government at the time, because his lyrics were starting to be reinterpreted by the public as being kind of critical of things that the government was doing. So he was no longer allowed to perform under his own name or anything like that. So he turned to musical theater and started composing music for the stage and making these sort of like actually kind of political statement pieces, trying to create music that could be like pro-union and help people organize and go and accomplish things in the world. And that was a kind of underground production in 1978 that was finally recorded and released as an album in the year 2004, featuring an arranger named Jung Jae-il, who was a friend of yours, and invited you to sing on this song that we're actually playing tomorrow. And it's a very structurally interesting song. I don't know if you remember much about recording it or how it went or anything like that. But.
Well, I received, so it's definitely a very structurally interesting song. I don't really know how to explain it. Yeah. It goes through many stages. There are parts where there's a chant, a bunch of people who are organizing, and then there's another part where it's melodic. It's very interesting. I hope many of you will attend the concert tomorrow and really have a chance to experience it. But Yeah, he's a very prolific, extremely well-respected producer in Korea. He was also a member. Jung Jae-il was also a member of this band called Gix, which consisted of probably the best guitarist, the best bassist, the best drummer. One of the best groups. That was more of a project group. They didn't make this to continue. They just did it for a couple albums. But he was actually the exact same age as I was, and so. When you're in ninth grade and you find someone who is your contemporary, in that sphere, you automatically kind of gravitate toward each other. And so we became very fast friends. And also in Korea, if you're even a year older, you have to call them by a different name. And he was the only guy that I could actually call him by his name. So we obviously bonded. And he's very active now, also. And 김민기 선생님, who is, like Jacob said, a very respected artist. He's very peculiar with who he trusts with his music. But for this remake, this rearrangement of this album, he trusted Jung Jae-il with it. And so basically when he called me, asked me if I would participate in 2 songs. One of them was like the theme music, and one of them was this very theatrical one that is being performed tomorrow. It was a no-brainer to say yes. And I remember going in, and I had some very interesting parts. There were a couple of melodic parts where you just sing. Basically, it sounds like a musical, like a solo musical. There was another part where I was what would you call it? I was the person that was telling everyone you can't organize.
You were anti-union.
I was anti-union. I worked for the company, and I was basically yelling at all these people, how dare you go against, the companies. And so I had to literally yell into a microphone for about 40 minutes. And we did it, and it was really fun because I'd never really done that before. Maybe if I were, working with HOT, I could have done that more, the shouting, but it was my chance to do it. So I enjoyed it. I really did. And so
that connection there is kind of why I bring it up, because you said you didn't really know how to describe how the song works. We thought a lot about that while creating this show. Basically, the way that this piece of music works is that he's actually interpolating a work song, a Korean melody that workers in the factories in the 70s used to sing at the time. And he's taking this one melody and he's actually distributing it across different parts of people who are going to sing it on stage. And also kind of warping that melody and using it in as many different ways as possible, where the meter changes, the key changes, it's extremely dynamic. Things sort of kind of like surprise you out of nowhere, sort of like in the HOT song that we heard, where all of a sudden it's very dramatic and there's like an interpolation of Für Elise by Beethoven. It's a totally different place. It's like almost like a different scene in a play or a musical or something like that. So this is what Kim Min-gi is doing in this song. And there's even, for the sake of dynamism, there's a moment where everything drops out and Soeun is just screaming for a little while, right? So in a very zoomed out sense, there are some similarities there to something like, an SMP style song. And it's when you think about what Kim Min-gi's music sounded like before he started composing for the stage, it was basically like Bob Dylan music. It's like totally different from anything that you could, even in the vaguest way, compare to something like K-pop. But when he started thinking in the terms of like it's going to be performed in front of people by, like live performers, and there's a choreography for it too, it all has to be really dynamic and totally different. And it's very interesting how somebody's mind like that as an artist can shift towards something that essentially predicts what K-pop becomes 15 years later. And I think a similar thing happened with SM, where Mr. Soeun Lee, the founder, was actually a contemporary of Kim Min-gi in the 70s. He was a folk musician at first. His earliest hits were folk songs. Nothing at all like what you heard with the HOT song, right? But he was a very forward-thinking guy, and over the 80s, he started using synthesizers and making new age music and kind of like techno pop and stuff like that, always thinking ahead. And when he, in the 90s, became somebody who was creating groups and thinking about the stage and how it was going to be performed and how it needs to be visually dynamic and things like that, it structurally has some similarities to what happened with this Kim Min-gi song in the late 70s, which I think is It's really prescient and kind of interesting how that. So there's something, at the end of the day, there's something, this whole musical theme too as well, of thinking about music as something bigger than just music itself, but one aesthetic component in an overall kind of like interlocking Rubik's Cube of pieces of content that lends itself to this way of thinking about music and has a lot to do with why it manifested in that way in Korea in the past 25 years.
I didn't think about this before, but during this conversation, and I might be wrong, but what's dawning on me a little bit now, and it's starting to make sense, is, I do think, and I'm Korean, so I should know this, I think Koreans are they're very emotional, and they can be very dramatic. I really do think that's true. And you can see that in K-dramas as well. I remember I had a law professor who told me about her favorite K-drama and how somebody's always extremely angry. Like the mother-in-law is always angry or somebody's angry. And she would ask me about that because you see screaming all the time. And I didn't really know what to say. But I really do think that maybe what's making K-pop and K-dramas and the whole culture of Korean entertainment successful stems from that we're highly emotional people and we like a lot of drama within our music. It changes genres and it goes all over the place, and you can kind of see that in the dramas and structure as well. And maybe it's something very new from the more nuanced dramas that you see here and in Europe and other places, and it's different, but it's also enticing. And so maybe that's the reason for,
and maybe that's what
success.
Makes it K-pop, isn't it? Because it is by Korean people with all their emotions and all their histories somehow put in there. So I think we can go on, but actually we need to wrap it up. So to finish it off, so where are we going with SM Entertainment? What's coming next for the K-pop?
Oh, okay.
He might need an hour.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to that.
Yeah. I'll be very quick. 그래서 저희는 어쨌든 이 K-팝이라고 하는 제가 2005년 제가 그냥 for time saving I'll speak in English even it's not perfect. So I joined SM Entertainment probably in 2005, and my first music forum was it is called Midem, which is always held in Cannes in France. In 2005, nobody knows K-pop. Of course, there was no words called K-pop. Nobody knows Korean. I explained, I'm from Korea, and where is Korea? Okay. Of course, they have no idea what is the Korean pop sound like. So I beg to anybody, just looks like writer or producer, do you have a song? I'm from Korea, something like that. And after 5 years later, so 2010, when YouTube, really grew up and the Girls' Generation, Super Junior, TVXQ, many others become really big, the word called like K-pop created. I think that's a miracle for me. It's a miracle. Yeah. There are not many music genres which contains like Korean, the country's name, like K-pop, J-pop, maybe Latin, and not many more. Yeah. So as a Korean, I'm very proud of it, and I really not only me but most of these K-pop music artists and companies, and we are very proud of ourselves and proud of what we've achieved since last like 20, 30 years with not only SM Entertainment but also this so like great musicians, Yunsang, Isungan. It's all assumption of all those works. We really want to make this not more like making more money. No, that's important because we're doing a business, but we really want this make more popular. So that's why we make let me play 30 seconds of a video, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Can you play that MOV file, please? Not this one. Yeah. Okay, this is called a regular. Hold a second. This is song called the regular. sung by the SM's boy band called the NCT. So NCT has NCT Korea team, Chinese team, and will be many more Japanese team. And this is how we're going, abroad. So this is song called Regular, but 3 different versions by 3 different bands. So please play it. Okay, here. This is English version by NCT 127, and this is here. It's a Korean version. And here, this is Chinese version by NCT Chinese unit called Wei. So this is how we're doing right now. One song, but maybe performed by many different groups, but under the group brand called it NCT. NCT 127, Wei. We're going to make NCT Hollywood in LA and States. We're going to make NCT Latin, maybe someday NCT Europe. That's our goal. So under the K-pop, because I'm from SM, so under SM's producing, we'd like to make this exportation. Can you
export model?
Export model. Not only music, but also whole contents and maybe the brand of team and maybe K-pop itself. That's our goal. So yeah.
So just to conclude, SM's business model is as or more innovative than its music, and it's really remarkable in and of itself. And that's actually the topic on which Chris is presenting at Lincoln Center tonight at 7 p.m. So if you're curious to hear more about that in a presentation about that.
And I think the tickets are almost sold out for the concert.
For the concert, I checked an hour ago. There's I think 3 left.
Concert is sold out actually, and
okay.
And tonight's speech is just free. It's
right. Yeah, his
on the street.
presentation tonight is free. It's 7 p.m. at Lincoln Center. So yeah.
But thank you so much for taking your time out today, especially Soeun for coming and sharing your story, and to Chris and to Jakob. And it's been a wonderful. I'm sorry we don't have too much time for Q&A, but I'm sure if you have any questions, you can come up and ask them, maybe.
Sure.
So. Soeun, would you like to close it off?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, everyone, I suppose, for coming. And I think I agree with what Chris said. I think from having, been in that industry, although it was many years ago, it's extremely, it's kind of emotional, and I feel very proud that they're doing so well. And I think that with the heightened status that K-pop has, amassed in the past few years, there could be a lot of, important issues that they could also, bring to light, because, with status comes responsibility and accountability. And I really do think that, as a lawyer now, and as a female professional, I think that K-pop artists have a unique position of power to kind of show good body, what the concept of good body image is, and there's a lot of this movement going on right now, across the world. I do see that, and I look back to my experiences in the industry back at a time when those types of issues weren't readily discussed. And so I do think that there's a lot that could be done and spoken about, along with the success. So with that, thank you all for coming, and thanks for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Fun.